Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. This is King Orange here, back again for another video. And here with me, guys, I got my good friend here, Deadponic.
Hello?
And today we are doing part 2 of the original Battlefront 2 Rise of the Empire campaign retrospective. Whew, that's a word salad. And this time, we will be covering the Imperial campaign. For those of you who are wondering, part 1 covered the Republic campaign, and that part of the retrospective is on Deadponic's channel right now as we speak. And part 2 is being covered here in my channel.
And,
So we are going to cover the glory of the Galactic Empire
hmm,
in this segment.
yes. So, a few things before we get started. I did want to clear up one quick thing. We didn't mention I forgot to mention in the tutorial level, your simulation days are over, Trooper. This is a real battle. And if you mess up, you'll wind up in a whole world of pain. I forgot to mention that in the part 1. But part 1 is officially on my channel, so go check that out. Link will be in the description. Now, onto the Imperial campaign. What's different? Well, first of all, you were playing as the Stormtroopers, so you got your E11. You may notice also that you now have you have your standard units. You have your rifleman, your heavy trooper, sharpshooter, and engineer. The engineer has that bucket helmet for some reason. I have no idea why. That's more of a little detail I noticed recently replaying the game. And then you have your two special units, which are the Imperial officer, who looks like General Veers in the movie, and you have the Dark Trooper. Now, the Imperial officer is running around with basically a grenade launcher and a sonic gun, which is similar to the Genoshin sonic blaster. And he's more of a support unit. He gives you like damage increase. He has a little recon droid, and he has that. And then you have the Dark Trooper. The Dark Trooper is interesting because in the actual lore, there were three phases of the Dark Trooper program. The first phase was basically they put a jump pack on a trooper, and it's implied very heavily that this phase 1 is basically a cyborg. Then you have the phase 2, which is more of a little heavier. They're more meant to deal with standard infantry, and the phase 1 is more of a special forces thing, so they're kind of squishy, and they have like a little arc caster. And then you have the phase 3, which is the heaviest, and that the phase 3 is where they actually got it's heavily implied within the lore that when they got to phase 3, they took out the human element, which means no hesitation, no what's the word I'm looking for here, just
None of that blasted conscience.
yes.
That conscience. I don't know if this is the right answer. Don't care. Do it.
Yeah, and basically,
But
and one other thing that my friends and I often point out is that the Phase 1 Dark Trooper, it has these little, like, red things on its armor, and we refer to him as the nipple dude. This is actually referenced in the Clone Apart series, where the lead character actually points this out and says, "Why do you have nipples on your armor?" And it's like, I can't help but notice that, too. And then the other thing is that in the Clone Wars campaign, you had a clone commander officer giving you orders. Now you have more of a human officer who is very posh, very British kind of thing. It's very
very typical of the Empire.
yes. So, all right, let's get started with.
I think
Oh,
I think they actually use the same like announcer in the multiplayer too, I
yes,
think.
yes, they do.
So
The reinforcements are dwindling. It's actually really cool, and actually, you can actually
now
play
hear this. All men to your battle stations.
pretty much.
It's great.
So starting off with the first mission of the campaign, we go to Naboo. Sadly, thankfully, no Gungans. We're not going to mention this, but basically, the first mission is it's your first mission as the Empire, and you're basically there to assassinate a queen because the queen has decided, well, we're going to break off diplomatic ties, and also she's harboring 3 Jedi. I don't know about you, but I'm getting some really bad PTSD from the Nightfall mission. I don't want to deal with those bastards again. No, thank you. So, and even the
But
cutscene,
once again, you got it.
and
Once again, they're there.
and the cutscene actually shows like a scout trooper with a sniper rifle actually pointing the gun and like the targeting rectangle going over the queen's head. This is the reason that it looks so similar to episode 1 is because limitations. But this actually, the whole makeup thing and the whole dress is actually a lore thing. It's part of the Naboo culture. And it's crazy how even the narrator says it would be the first time that the 501st would have to affect a regime change. It's, as we kind of mentioned in the last video, the 501st is basically Palpatine's hit squad. And
Which, as we mentioned in the campaign, it's a very, like, metaphorically that well. In this, it's, like, quite literal in every sense of the word. And so right away, pretty much from the moment you spawn in, you instantly feel a big difference. Because unlike before, you are not fighting battle droids anymore. You're fighting
humans.
local militia humans. And you can already tell by the way the game programs the AI, they fight much more viciously than the battle droids do.
Oh,
Like, the battle droids were tough, but there was a very consistent pattern to them. While with these guys, right away, as soon as you fight this local militia group, basically the Naboo security forces, they are viciously trying to kill you. They are aggressive. They push right on you. And they can also, like, really hit things. Like, their accuracy is pretty darn good. So if you're not careful, you can pretty much get gunned down, like, almost as soon as you spawn in.
Oh, one little detail nitpick here. Because of limitations of technology, there are some character models that are holding the DL-44, which this is particularly notable for Princess Leia, and especially for some other characters. Now, don't get me wrong, the DL-44 is a great blaster, but it's not the blaster that Princess Leia uses in the movie. And even then, it's like, okay, granted, yes, I mean, it's an iconic weapon, and I guess, technology limitations. It's fine. Anyway, so you go through and you actually assassinate the queen, and yes, this is literally where I will literally ask the question, Hans, are we the bad guys?
Yeah, we covered that a good amount in part one, and you can already tell there's enough of a time gap there where the 501st has become much more vindictive at this point. There's not, like, all that, did we have any doubts, any private traitors' thoughts?
No.
That's not there anymore. It's now just, these people are causing problems for the Empire. We're gonna go kill them.
Yeah.
Like, and so for most of the level, it's pretty straightforward in approach. You're just taking command posts for most of it. You have to take the right side, the left side, then you go to the center plaza, which has a lot of vehicles and turret defenses.
Oh, God.
After you get the plaza, you have to then destroy the control grid that controls the auto turrets. So you do that. And then afterwards, you kill the queen.
Oh, you have to kill the 3 Jedi that are protecting her.
Oh, yeah, and the Jedi Royal Guard. I forgot about that. Yeah, you kill 3 Jedi Royal Guards, then you kill the queen. And then when the queen's dead, it's like, congratulations, you have won this battle.
Yeah, pretty much. And, yeah, and the narrator basically says along the lines of, after that whole thing, basically, the 501st garnered a well-deserved reputation as Vader's fist, and this is what they would be referred to as going forward. And then we get to the next mission. Can anybody say nostalgia? Because we're on Mustafar, and this is the only level where we're not in the Clone Wars campaign. We're actually playing this through the Empire campaign. It turns out, well, guess what? There was a bug that survived, and he found himself a droid factory. Yep, we're officially fighting the CIS, well, the remnants of the CIS battle droids as the Empire, before Rebels explored this concept. And so...
It's essentially the Separatist holdouts concepts, which back in 2005, this actually, when you kind of think about it, because this released in 2005, this is technically the first time we see a Separatist holdout.
Yeah,
because they
true.
explore Separatist holdouts in the Dark Times comics, but that wasn't until like after Revenge of the Sith
Yeah,
came
that's
out.
true, actually, now that I think about it.
You know,
Anyway,
while Battlefront 2, as we mentioned in part 1, kind of came out around the same time
yeah.
as the movie. So like pretty much this is almost your first exposure to it. And yeah, like something very unique that the Battlefront 2 campaign does that's a contrast to Instant Action or even Galactic Conquest is that it gives you that cross-era faction wars where you're playing as the Empire and you're fighting against the CIS remnant, which from a gameplay perspective is just the CIS.
Yeah.
And essentially you're going against Gizo Delzo's separatist holdout, which is like a spare droid factory on Mustafar, and you're essentially going there to destroy the factory, kill him before he builds enough battle droids to incite another Clone Wars situation.
Yeah,
So,
well, the space mission starts where you've actually been boarded and you have to blow up that damn droid gunship, which acts as the droid transport in this game. And then this is the only level that I can think of, at least in terms of the map, where the space hazards are more likely to kill you because even the commander says, "Watch out for the asteroids, man. They're easy to destroy, but it doesn't mean they aren't dangerous." And it's kind of interesting how they take the idea of pitting the TIE fighter against a vulture droid because they kind of represent the same mindset where it's all about swarm tactics. The only difference,
swarm tactics, quantity over quality.
yeah. And then you get to the ground mission where you're running
Oh,
through.
there is one thing I
Oh,
am going to mention about the space battle real quick, if that's okay.
yeah.
Um, I find it hilarious that one of the objectives of the space battle was literally, let's take the CIS bomber and you have to steal one and take it back to the Star Destroyer. And it's like,
Mhm.
Lord Vader has personally ordered you to take this, like, but why? Why? Like, what's the purpose of this?
Who knows? I mean, as we talked about before, the whole thing with the limitations of technology was basically the bomber was basically the was it looked like General Grievous' ship. So it could be
Is it like trying to imply that maybe General Grievous' ship, since it shares the model, do you think they're like implying that General Grievous' ship was used as like an inspiration source for Vader's own personal TIE fighter?
well, believe it or not. Okay, so Vader actually went before he got his X1. He actually had the Ectus 2, but it was too big for. It was actually too small for him. Like the cockpit was too small, and I imagine that they took some design elements, including having a hyperdrive and advanced weaponries. It also would make a lot of sense that they would basically strip this thing down and basically. The one thing that I remember from the movie was when Obi-Wan climbs into the cockpit, it actually pressurizes. So it's entirely possible that this also could be the inspiration for Vader's hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, I guess that's possible when you think about it. But anyways, yeah, on to the ground battle.
Oh, ground battle. Okay. By the time we made our way to the molten surface of Mustafar, it was apparent that Delso had been a busy little bug. All by his lonesome, he had found a previously hidden droid factory, fired it up, and cranked out his own private army of battle droids. Needless to say, this got the men of the 501st a little hot under the helmet, and not just because of all that lava. Truth be told, we had our fill of those gearheads during the war. We couldn't stomach the thought of going through another one. So we blew them up. Blew up the droids, blew up the factory. Damn near blew up the whole planet. I love
Yes, it's such a great
it.
sequence.
And
And yeah,
one one
oh, sorry.
one thing though, you're not going through the mining facility that's in the movie. It's a separate facility. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Even though from a multiplayer perspective, like, yeah, again, technology limitations, but essentially from the moment you land, you're on the outside platform, the landing platform, you're going right in, and pretty much right away you're greeted by a lot of E2 super battle droids.
Mhm.
And, well, as an old saying makes its return,
Watch the
watch those
wrist
wrist
rockets.
rockets.
And another thing we kind of forgot to mention here is, believe it or not, in BF1, I believe the standard infantry was the B1 in BF1, but in BF2 they upgraded it to a B2.
No. Even in Battlefront 1, they had the Super Battle Droid
Uh,
as the mainline point infantry in Galactic Conquest and Instant Action. The only reason you're probably thinking that is because if you played the historical campaigns, the first two levels has you played the Naboo segments, and those you play as a B1 battle droid.
oh, that's why. I figured. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, that
it's
makes sense.
which kind of it is puzzling. Like, it's like why would you create the B1 battle droids for, just that, but not make them playable anywhere else in the game? A little weird.
Also droidicas, because just droidicas in narrow hallways, like that is a nightmare
Yeah,
situation.
you got to move in very like swiftly and very aggressively. Like if you give the droids breathing room, they'll really screw you up.
and
So,
and then you kill that bug, and then you finally plant an orbital beacon to basically trigger a orbital bombardment, which finally gets rid of Mustafar, at least as far as that side of things goes. And it's funny because, as far as the lore goes, this was also the location where Vader made built his castle, if I'm not mistaken. Or is that a canon thing?
that's Disney canon.
Oh, okay.
Vader never had a castle in Mustafar Legends.
Vajun?
Vader had his castle in Legends on Vajun, I
Oh,
believe.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so that
Yeah,
it.
but also it's kind of interesting too because they also highlight how like one of the objectives is like destroying droid schematics. And it's kind
Hmm.
of interesting there where it's like I wonder what I wonder what he was designing.
Which is funny also because you have the B1s, you have B2s, Droidicas, and Magna Guards, which weren't produced in large quantities. Now, granted, TCW had not come out at this point, so there was no commando droids. Thank Christ there were no commando droids. I cannot until, later BF2 basically brought them
Well,
in.
yeah, the EA Battlefront 2 incorporated them. It's kind of funny in a way because like the commando droids are almost like their introduction almost kind of takes the place of they're kind of like a weird hybrid in go between like, you have the assassin droids and the Magna Guards, which the assassin droids were really common among the CIS within the EU, especially there was one design used on Jabim that was utilized a lot.
Okay.
Um, had like a shoulder cannon thing. Kind of looked like the Predator a little, honestly, truth
Was
be
it was
told.
it the was it the was it the ultra droid?
No, that was the B3,
That
I
was the
think.
B3. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that was the B3. But either way, it's like the Magna Guards are kind of take place as that special unit within old Battlefront 2. And in a way, it's like new BF2 kind of made the Commando Droid almost like the replacement a little bit. So,
It kind of makes sense because as far as the new BF2 goes, I mean, Commando droids have their vibro swords, and then you have Magna Guards who have that electro staff thingy. And also, if I remember correctly, from the Lego video game, you can when you actually unlock the Magna Guard, you can actually like spin the thing around and it'll like deflect laser fire. That would be pretty broken, to be totally honest.
yeah, well, that's actually why probably biggest sin in Battlefront 2, the original, is like having the Magna Guards playable as the CIS, but not giving them the electro
Oh
stats.
god, their weapons are okay, but they're not perfect. Like they have like this like rapid
I
fire.
like the radiation launcher is really good. It's when you get to the Bulldog that
I
has
like
its
the
issues
bulldog.
because it's a great gun in theory. It's just the problem is the tracking mechanism of it is terrible. So it's really one of those weapons that even though ideally you're supposed to be using it in like mid to long ranges, it really only works as a close range weapon where you can just fire it in people's faces.
It is a you really got to know how to use it. In my opinion, the other thing that's funny is also the Magna has a neurotoxin thing that it deploys, which deals damage over time. Now, great against meat bags, but ineffective against droids unless you're a cyborg. So
Yeah, which is here or there. But yeah, you eventually destroy the droid factory, and then that's where you move on to the third level, which is
Camino.
Camino.
Officially, there was never a clone rebellion on Camino. And well, we learned very quickly that is to be not to be the case because you are you are basically fighting. Well, unofficially you are fighting your brothers, but the Kaminoans have basically, same thing with the droids. They cranked out their own little army of clone troopers, and you're basically
Yeah,
fighting.
special batch.
Yeah,
Special batch specifically created to take arms against the Empire. They're equipped with old like phase one equipment and armor and all that. And you as the 501st are sent to deal with the problem.
all right, so for this level, the hero of the mission is Boba Fett. And the interesting thing here is during the Galactic Conquest in some maps in Instant Action, you can actually play as his father, Jango Fett, which is kind of a weird lore thing because he died of Geonosis. So, anyway, uh, Jango has a kind of a sniper pistol thing and he has a flamethrower, and much like his son, but Boba has jetpacks, a flamethrower, his E3, which looks like the E11. It's kind of it's the equivalent to the,
Technical limitations.
yeah, it, it's equivalent almost to like a battle rifle from Halo because it fires in 3 round bursts. And, he also has a jetpack, which, thank Christ that they gave the jetpack, like, it's a reasonable amount of fuel because oh boy, because Boba Fett doesn't use that jetpack enough. We don't need to get into that anyway. So you infiltrate. What is it, Topoka City? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're attacking Topoka City. Right away, you're essentially going against the Phase 1 rogue clones that the Kaminoans created. And right away, pretty much your first objective is secure a template of Jango Fett's DNA and bring it back so the Empire can continue to produce clones after all this.
And you also have to blow up a gunship within, I believe, it's a certain amount of time because the Kaminoans are trying to get away.
Yeah, that's the final objective. Yeah, so you have that. You have destroying the like basically you are committing a massive genocide right then and there by destroying all the remaining batches of insurrectionist clones before they're even out of their tubes. Like this is all the like infant ones. Like
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Geneva Conventions,
More
more
like
like Geneva Suggestions.
more like Geneva checklist. So the ending
Yeah,
cutscene is
exactly.
the ending cutscene is actually kind of interesting because they revealed that from that point forward, clone templates will be produced from a wide variety of sources, and the narrator says we never got used to the new guys.
Yeah, it's like a variety of sources, and it's probably around this point you would logically assume they start the human recruitment too.
Yeah, and
So, and
conscription.
I think what's interesting about it is like when you think about it, the first three levels are ironically prequel-centered locations based on very almost prequel-esque conflicts. And in a way, I almost consider these three levels to be I almost call them the anti-prequel trilogy. Not in the sense of like, ooh, they hate the prequels, quite the contrary, but like because it takes the prequel scenarios, but it completely flips them on their heads. It's
Yeah,
like it's like the first level is basically an allegory. It's basically a reflection of the Phantom Menace. It's kind of a similar situation. The Queen is under political duress decides to take up arms against the occupying force, which in the Phantom Menace was the Trade Federation, while in this it's the Empire. But, in the Phantom Menace, the Queen in Naboo prevails, while this time the Empire succeeds. Second level.
Camino, Attack of the Clones.
No, not Kamina, Mustafar.
Oh, Mustafar.
It's a Revenge of
That's
the
a
Sith
Sith.
location, but it's centered around an Attack of the Clones scenario. A separatist is trying to build a droid army to take on the main government. In Attack of the Clones, the Republic invades the planet, tries to eliminate the separatist leadership and destroy the army. They fail. This time,
They
the
succeed.
Empire comes in, they succeed. And then you have Camino, which, even though it's an Attack of the Clones location, it's ironically a
I Revenge
Revenge
of the
of the
Sith
Sith
scenario.
scenario. The clone troopers are turning are turning on the Empire, much in the same way they turn on the Jedi, these clones successfully kill off, the clones kill off the Jedi, but they fail to destroy the Empire or push the Empire off, and the Empire essentially wipes the Kaminoans out in the rogue clones in a very similar fashion to how the Jedi get wiped out.
And
And so,
funny enough about Bad Batch. Speaking of Bad Batch here, we never actually find out what happens to Topoka City, but thanks to canon sources, we kind of get an idea that, well, a Venator walked in and basically blew Topoka City into pieces and let it sink into the
yeah,
ocean.
within the new canon. Technically, though, if you do want to be an a-hole, Legends does cover Topoka City again within The Force Unleashed 2.
Oh, that's right. I
And we
forgot
know
about
that
that.
eventually becomes a battleground within the Galactic Civil War.
That's
How much
right.
it makes sense, I'll leave that for everyone else to decide. But
Oh,
like,
we'll have to do a review of Force Unleashed 2 and discuss like certain things
oh my
because
gosh,
oh,
that would have a mountaintop of things to talk about. Both good, but also a lot of bad.
bad. Yeah. So
Um,
the next mission.
but yeah,
Oh,
so
sorry.
so we technically know that after this whole incident, Vader just uses it as his personal experiment place.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
and then next mission is the very first original trilogy location.
you are literally playing on the Death Star, and this is like basically it is the first time that the 501st as a whole is playing through major events of the original trilogy. When it was finished, the Death Star was the Emperor's favorite toy. It was also the most boring assignment in the galaxy for a stormtrooper. Tedious inspection drills, guarding impregnable force field generators. Things got so bad that when a prison riot erupted into cell block, we were almost happy to have someone shooting us again. If only we know what the the embarrassment of a snipe storm we were about to walk into. We probably would have jettisoned the whole detention block into space. Now, funny thing about this level is you can run around and you can actually find various locations related to the Death Star in the first in A New Hope. The conference room, the fire control center, the
The prison room.
prison break, and there's a garbage chute that you can go down into the trash compactor, and also you have the various hangars. I particularly like this level. This is a really fun map on instant action.
The Death
Also,
Star, yeah, in instant action, the Death Star is actually ironically like one of the best maps in the entire game, which kind of makes it ever more tragic that it's one of the only locations that's not featured in Galactic Conquest,
yeah, that's kind of interesting.
which is kind of sad because it's like I feel like they could almost get away with it because what they could have done is just make the Death Star a base location, kind of like how Camino and Geonosis are base locations in the Clone Wars one, where like once when the opposing side takes it, it just gets wiped off the map.
Yeah.
Like
Also, let's not
like I
forget.
feel like the Death Star could have been that for the Empire.
Oh, let's not forget the bottomless pits. Trust me, I fall into those a lot. So basically, you're trying to quell a riot, and somehow the rebels have managed to not only take control of the fire control center, which,
Somehow the rebels escaped.
oh my god, basically they take control of the fire control center, which controls the giant laser, and they've also managed to get their hands on the Death Star plant. You have to basically take care of this. You have to secure the fire control center, secure the cell block, and also blow up a transport within a certain amount of time. And funny enough, the narrator actually at the end says basically what after the embarrassment of the prison riot, Lord Vader basically dragged us around the galaxy in search for the stolen Death Star plans. Ultimately, our punishment ended up turning into our salvation. The poor saps that were on the Death Star when it was destroyed were wiped out in an instant. It it's
Yeah,
very
it's nice poetic irony, and it kind of fits into the overall theme of it kind of helps set up what I would consider to be the overall theme of the Imperial campaign, which is complacency breeds incompetence. Like
yeah.
like it's like when the Empire's constantly being challenged, they're always on their toes, they're like straight to the point, wipe out every resistance there. And you see that in Naboo, you see that in Mustafar, and
Mustafar.
you see that in Camino. When the Empire's on their toes, they're borderline unstoppable. But then the minute they start like,
Getting complacent,
haha, we're the biggest guys in the room. No one can take us on.
they run into something that they can't fully comprehend. And this leads into Polis Massa. Even the
Oh,
near...
one
Oh,
more thing about the Death Star real quick, if that's okay.
yeah.
I also like how later on, for anyone who's played Battlefront Elite Squadron, you unironically played the Death Star breakout level in a way within the Rebel side. So it's kind of funny because
Also,
in that
this...
your main character breaks the Rebels out of prison and then takes control of the Death Star laser room.
Yeah.
So
And this mission is actually referenced in the Death Star novel, too. We'll have... I guess we'll have to cover one of the PSP games at some point.
yeah, those are truly their own interesting breed.
They're a lot of fun, actually. Anyway, so now we're on to the Polis Massa mission. This is actually another kind of prequel level. Basically, the narrator says, well, basically, we're just going to go in and get the plans on an encrypted holodisk. Now we're starting to get sick and tired of this rebellion. The
By the time we landed on Poas Massa, we were starting to get sick of this so-called rebellion. In the past, we've enjoyed putting down a local insurrection or two. They kept the troops sharp and the Empire feared. But these rebels were different. They were organized, they were growing, and they
they
were
were everywhere.
everywhere.
And it's funny because you can actually go like this is another prequel level where you can go and you can actually find the spot where Luke and Leia were born, and it's a pretty interesting level, although it is very difficult. It can get very difficult very fast.
It's
And
very challenging from a gameplay perspective. Though I would say it's very great from a gameplay perspective, though I do feel like the story elements surrounding it are a little they could have been a little bit better, but
it
that's
does
okay.
it does do explain a little bit how they were able to like track down who had the plans, because they actually kind of explain like how...
Several transmissions were beamed to the ship by rebel spies. I want to know what happened to the plans they sent you.
and
We're about to get to that.
oh yes, and for anybody who's
Taking
interested,
out that.
the originally it was just they basically said that the Death Star plans were transmitted by spies, not what happens in Rogue One. Though Rogue One is still a great film, it does kind of clean up a little bit about how they were able to get the plans, which leads us into Tantive 4 from the very first Star Wars movie. Funny enough,
And you're quite literally doing the opening scene of A New Hope.
Oh,
You're quite
I never thought I'd get to make this reference. Everyone stay calm. We are taking over the ship. Eye of ice.
it's great. But yeah, right away you're essentially playing the Imperial side of the raid on the Tantum 4. And something that I absolutely adore is how right when you spawn in, you are behind that door and you can essentially you blast through it straight through and there's rebels right on the other side and you're just mowing them down.
Yeah.
And to me, it's great because what it signifies, which is great in the Clone Wars segment too, but like you especially get the feeling here, is like it really gets you to connect with the story almost from a film perspective because you can almost headcanon yourself into thinking, oh yeah, I'm totally that stormtrooper right over there
Yeah. And
when you see the movie.
so the
Like
hero...
I always just
Oh,
imagine myself, I'm the stormtrooper that went up to Vader and went like, the Death Star plans are not in the main computer.
And also the hero of this mission is Lord Vader. So if you ever want to, recreate the scene of the hallway scene in Rogue One, you can do that. It's a lot of fun. And I have never had much more glee than playing as Darth Vader. Although he is slow, in this case, it works in terms of the level because he's slow, and also just lightsaber throw is overpowered. And a narrow corridor with a bunch of rebels standing in it is target practice. It is so much fun and I love it. And then you have to stun Princess Leia. And And then
Gameplay wise, you just shoot her.
yeah,
You just shoot her. It's
and
it's another weird case where it's like you just kind of have to accept it because of the gameplay
yeah,
purposes. But
and they
yeah.
even mention like how a, a pompous little princess standing up to Lord Vader was inconceivable. I don't think they understand the meaning of that word. I understood that reference.
Ha. But yeah, essentially ends with Princess Leia getting captured and all that. You know, it kind of surprises me just a little bit, just as a nod. I am surprised because I feel like they almost could have done it, but they didn't. I am actually a little bit surprised they didn't do a mission in Mos Eisley.
Oh, yeah, that's the only level that they don't use. One of the only levels that they don't use. The other
Well,
one,
it's kind of just it's strange to me because I'm like you have Mos Eisley there and you could theoretically program like a really good level out. But
hell,
I guess
hell,
they felt I guess they felt like the campaign was already getting like pretty long by that point.
hell, you can even they could have done it where you actually slaughtered the Jawas at their sandcrawler and kill Luke's parents
If they had the Dune Sea level,
if they had the
yeah.
density level. Yeah. So then we get to Yavin 4. There's a bit of a time gap, and it turns out, well, let's just say now you're in space, Yavin, and this is the probably the most emotional part of the entire campaign for me personally. When the Death Star was destroyed, about half of the 501st Legion was still in the hangar getting into their ships. Of those that made it out, another third were caught in the explosion. I'd fought with some of those men for over 20 years. It really shows that this narrator character, he's really pissed off. He's really sad that like so many of his colleagues and so many of his friends were killed.
I fought with some of those men for over 20 years. It's it grows to show just the evolution growth and it helps humanize the elements of the 501st still because up until this point they've been very follow the Imperial orders, do whatever, but this is kind of like the very first time ever since probably Nightfall that they genuinely feel some kind of like heavy remorse a little bit, or in this case, like tragic sadness. And then that sadness very quickly transfers into anger.
Yep. And you basically you're fighting over Yavin, but it's just after the Battle of Yavin. So this is where the rebels have basically. This also explains why they're not on Yavin by the time of Empire. They've actually relocated. And yeah, you're playing through that. You play through the space mission. The space mission is actually pretty fun, though. I did have a X-wing kamikaze me, so
Yeah. It's also kind of strange too because there's also a weird story element in Space Yavin where it's like saying, "Oh, the rebel ship's gonna jump into light speed and blast right through us." It's like, wait, what? What?
I mean it's a good
Ladies
thing.
and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to what very closely could have been the Holdo maneuver before the Holdo
Zone maneuver.
maneuver.
Oh dear God.
And yeah, thank goodness the Empire stops that because I am not in the mood to deal with another broken space battle mechanic that makes no frickin' sense. But so the Empire shuts that crap down before it goes anywhere.
And
Gee, maybe the First Order could have done the same and they would have been smart.
hmm.
But
So yeah,
any
yeah. So you
but
get.
anyways,
Mhm.
we eventually make our way back planet side.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'll let Orange explain this one because this is his Nightfall.
Ugh. Yavin 4 is probably single-handedly the worst and simultaneously most frustrating level in the entire game. And anyone who plays it will know why. They don't give you a lot of reinforcements to work with. The rebels are spawning in with tanks, tanks, and more tanks. They make you capture, like on the top bridge line thing, there's like a small court area. You have to capture that and hold it for like 4 freaking minutes as the rebels are literally raiding you with Alliance assault tanks like again and again and again. You're going to die a lot. And then to cap it all off, it's just pretty much the whole thing is like you can also not really see the rebels that well because they're wearing like camo stuff.
Yeah,
So
and funny enough, I don't know if this is how it is in the level. Is there any like rebels in the like the tower turrets?
yeah, there is.
Oh,
There is,
great.
and that makes it worse. Like Yavin is quite literally just a frustrating level to its core. It's it's almost every problem I take with Utapau except on steroids.
Oh boy. Yeah. And it's funny also because like the narrator's like was so blinded by anger, he's like, I guess we won.
Well, it's just dang bitter victory there. But yeah, Yavin's kind of I would definitely say it is the weakest level within the Imperial segment. It is
I
very
could get
much
behind that.
yeah, it falls into that problem of just being artificially difficult for no really good reason. And it's like I get it, the game's gradually like progressing itself to be more difficult, but it's kind of like there's a difference between being difficult and flat out trying to BSS.
Oh yeah. And then we cut to the final level of the game where you are literally playing through the Battle of Yavin. Or fuck.
Battle of Hoth.
Battle of Hoth, sorry, my bad. But you are literally playing through the Battle of Hoth, Empire Strikes Back. Oh baby, it's giant camel time. Hans,
And
loads
they're
the
very
armor
loose.
piercing.
And unlike every other level, this one is actually very loose because it's like it just gives you 15 minutes to complete every objective in it.
Oh yeah.
So it's not,
Mm.
oh, you get 3 minutes, do this objective. Oh, now you got another 4 minutes, do this objective. Oh, you got 2 minutes to hold this thing. It's like, no, you got 15 minutes, capture the command post, destroy the shield generator, and wipe out, capture the main hangar, and then go destroy the rebel transport.
Yeah. And also you get to play as Darth Vader again, but giant robot camels. Hans, loads the armor piercing.
But it's cool because you get the AT-AT close, it blows up the shield generator, or even plays a clip from the movie for it once.
I love that. It's funny
Target,
also.
maximum firepower.
It's also funny because the Imperial officer is wearing the same armor that General Veers is, which I'm guessing that the Imperial officers wear that during battle, so it helps them stand out from the stormtroopers. That's my guess anyway.
Yeah, it does. Plus,
So
it offers them a little bit of protection.
yeah, not much, but
Not much, but just enough.
and
But
one thing though is you are referring to these stormtroopers as snow troopers. So you have the snow gear, which is really cool. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Galactic Marines with their gear, which I wouldn't be surprised if the Empire took that and basically adopted it for winter warfare.
it wouldn't surprise me, which does make you wonder if is Megiddo known to be like a very cold planet?
It is an icy planet. It does have some harsh winters, but it's not a very snowy planet. That could just be me though. Anyway, so
It's kind of like living in Canada when it's
oh
winter.
oh you can go to hell. Oh
But
hell's already
as
frozen
you
over here. So
Yeah, but as you continue, you capture the main hangar. It has a cutscene play where it's like when you're trying to capture it, the Millennium Falcon's there,
it
but then
takes
as soon as you capture it, it plays the cutscene of like the film clip of it leaving, and then it's gone. And you're just like,
yeah.
oh, well, I guess we just rehearsed that scene from The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And
So
then
and then
finally, it gives you one last objective, which is to take this bombardment, this orbital beacon, implant it under the rebel transport, and then you have to defend that area for like a solid 2 to 3 minutes.
And then orbital bombardment happens, and you can tell that the narrator is very proud of, he the rebels were basically routed, and it was and thanks to no small part of thanks to the fighting men of the 501st, and yeah, and the campaign. Which, funny enough, let's talk about that whole thing where with the Endor. It's heavily implied that the narrator was not either he was killed on Endor or he was not at Endor when the Battle of Endor happened. My theory is that he was killed on Endor. And my guess is he was one of the stormtroopers that either Han killed or he was one of the ones that was killed by the teddy
Uh,
bears.
oh no, the Ewoks.
Oh
The
gosh.
Ewoks.
I mean,
But
it would make sense.
and yeah, and it's very clever on the campaign's part because there are some people that question, well, shouldn't Endor have had a campaign level? And I'm like, I like this more because for one, Endor in the grand scheme of things would not have made a very good campaign level to begin with.
Nope. Nope.
Like it's just one giant long line. Like
With
what are you gonna
trees.
do with that?
With
With
trees
trees, what are you gonna do with that?
and the
But
traps.
secondly, and more importantly, it's also a good point because it ends it where it's a story about these clones serving the Republic and then serving the Empire, and it's appropriate that it ends on the Empire's high point, where it's like, we won. We routed the rebels, we crippled them. They're not going to be able to fight us anymore, allegedly.
Mm.
And the new Death Star's getting built bigger than ever and
Oh
everything
boy.
else. And so you have that idea. So then it allows you to really run theories in your head of, oh, so what happened to the narrator after this point? And we will never truly know.
Although there is the idea that he was, because we're playing through the events of Empire Strikes Back, he could have been one of the clones that was killed on Bespin. Although the Bespin map was not introduced until much later because
Yeah, through a DLC. So
yeah,
yeah, the Cloud City map wasn't really accounted for either, which is kind of a shame, but certain cuts had to be made. But
yeah,
yeah, pretty much you know, upon like reaching the end with the Hoth campaign, it's just you have that huge moment and then pretty much cuts there. So yeah, I mean, pretty much as a whole, that is the Imperial campaign. So much like the Clone Wars, Deadponic, I will let you give your overall opinion on the Imperial campaign before I do the same.
yeah. So
And how does it scale in comparison to the Clone Wars campaign?
in terms of the Imperial campaign, probably my favorite mission is Tantive 4 and also the Death Star level because they're such unique maps and also because they took the care to actually like make these maps from scratch and basically they were able to like use the movies as reference. And it's kind of interesting how the clones go from basically fighting a war that they were bred for to basically becoming essentially, well, as we've already described, Palpatine's hit squad. But they put down insurrections, they put down, local resistances, and then
And uprisings
and
and
yeah,
yeah,
and you play through many of the events of the original trilogy,
yeah, sorry.
and I actually appreciate it for that, and also I like that the clones don't have their moment where they're like, are we the bad guys? Are we sure we're doing this for the right reasons? Unlike like what canon does. But
Yeah, with EA Battlefront 2, like it is very much a case where the 501st clones have that strong conviction to the very end.
yeah,
And on one hand, in a weird, twisted way, it's actually quite admirable of them because it is, in a sense, like they do maintain that kind of loyalty that you would want from the perfect soldier. But the problem is just it's kind of like I mentioned in the tragedy in part one. It's like the issue with the clones here is like because of the regime changing, they're essentially complacent with that change and essentially like because the institution becomes evil, so too do they by proxy, even though deep down they don't really comprehend that they are. To them, it's just we're doing the same thing we've always done. To them, protecting the Republic and enforcing the Empire is one and the same. And you see that personified really well where it's kind of also interesting where it's like you do see the Imperial ideology more engrooted in them in the Imperial campaign because like I said, even when you take Nightfall where they execute Order 66, they're very remorseful about it. They're very like, like, did we have any doubts, any private traders' thoughts? Or in the case of Ayla Sakura, when her death came, I hoped it was quick. But here it's like, no, screw all these people like rebelling against the Empire. We're gonna kill them.
Yeah, and as we pointed out, like the first three missions are basically reminiscent of the prequel trilogy, like the anti-prequel trilogy, as you said. And of those three levels, I think Mustafar really is the one that really hits for me because Mustafar is such a unique. It's a prequel level that you're playing as the Empire, and I thought that was a really cool thing. Also, one thing that I
It also just has a very nice dynamic too, where it's like the Empire versus the droids. Like it's interesting seeing that because it's like seeing a leftover from one era going against the other, and they're still radically different.
okay,
Like they're similar, but they're different. And
isn't there something I think you told me about this where if in instant action if you're playing as one of the factions on Mustafar your hero is Anakin, isn't that is it no
Empire.
it's
Yeah,
Empire.
if you play as the Empire on Mustafar in instant action, which is quite puzzling. Yeah, I covered that a bit in part one, but and it's a shame because like the Empire level on Mustafar is so ridiculously fun just with the premise of the Empire taking on the battle droids that it's like it's kind of almost a shame that Battlefront 2 never really incorporated that with an instant action or galactic conquest. Like imagine if for example in like galactic conquest you could choose any of the factions that you wanted. So like you could do Empire versus CIS um or the Empire versus the Republic or the Rebels versus the CIS. Like just there's so many or the Republic versus the Rebels. Like there's so many possibilities you could do with that.
So
And
So, in addition to the main campaign, the game also has instant action, as we talked about multiple times. It has Galactic Conquest, which is a strategy base where you basically go planet to planet. You get your upgrades, you get your units, you have to buy all of them, and you have a unique um, mode which was introduced in this game, which was Hunt. Certain maps have an indigenous population of two sides usually, where you play as one and you're basically trying to get points by killing the other side. For Endor, it's the teddy bears versus the. I don't know why they chose the scout troopers, but
probably because they're very recognizable because that was kind of like the main soldier you saw in Return of the Jedi
that's
was
true.
the Scout Trooper. So you saw them a lot, and then you have that for Naboo. It's the battle droids versus the
And
Gungans. For
Kashyyyk, it's Wookiees versus Magna Guards, and Tatooine, it is what is it? Tusken Raider,
Jawas versus Tusken Raiders,
and then
and then
Hoth.
Geonosis.
Oh,
You have Geonosis, which is the clones versus the Geonosians, and then you have Hoth, which is the rebels versus the Wampas.
one thing about the certain maps is for some reason they decide rather than giving you your full arsenal like they do with Hoth, they decide let's just give you the sharpshooter. Have fun, like
Yeah, the hunt mode is a cool mode, but it definitely had room to like really grow and become like a more refined version, which sadly Battlefront 3 never really had the chance to come out and do that. And then we really don't ever see the hunt mode come up again until EA's Battlefront 2, where you get Ewok Hunt, which is a fun mode in its own merit. I actually, if we ever talk about EA Battlefront 2, I actually really like that mode. It's just it's a shame it's not expanded on a little bit more, but
yeah.
I digress. But yeah, so I would say getting into final rankings. So how would you rate I keep hitting my mic. I feel like an idiot. What would you rank the Republic campaign, the Empire campaign, and then just the campaign overall when you put both pieces together as an overall like campaign package?
So for the Republic campaign, the only reason that I'm docking off 2 points is because of Utapau and Nightfall, so it would be a strong 8 out of 10. That's still a high rank. And then for the Imperial campaign, the only reason I'm knocking off a point is because of Yavin and maybe Hoth. But I'd say they're pretty even in terms of like just 8 out of 10 and 8 out of 10. But overall, in terms of the overall campaign, it is a very strong 9 out of 10.
Yeah, overall, especially for what they were going for, I think it does everything it set out to do really well. Like, a lot of people are going to compare it to high budget type campaigns, kind of like Halo or Call of Duty or whatever. And it's like, does Battlefront 2 have that same grandiose as those games? No,
No.
but it's not trying to be that. It's trying to be, hey, here's a little interesting, like, it's kind of like the way I see it, it's like if the entire game is like one really awesome like meal, the campaign is like the campaign's kind of like a good dessert thrown in.
Yeah.
Or you could almost see it the other way around. It's like an appetizer and then the game is a meal. Like it entices you. It's the reason if like the way I see it, instant action, you just do what you want, have fun. The campaign is what gets you into the game, and then Galactic Conquest is what keeps you there. And that's the way I see it. Like
Yeah.
the campaign is good at hooking you in, getting you a story that, well, not like the most complex in the world, does its job and does it well, and introduces you with unique gameplay opportunities that you're not gonna see in Galactic Conquest or Instant Action.
Yeah.
So I would firmly agree that for what it was setting out to do and doing it well, I would probably also give it a strong, I think I'm going to give it a strong 8 out of 10 just because there are enough design problems to hold it, just barely hold it back from reaching that 9. Which I have the same opinion as you. Clone Wars campaign is 8 and Imperial campaign's 8. So overall it's an 8 for me, but I will say extremely strong 8 out of 10. And I give it the Centrist Fruit Badass seal of approval.
Stealing from Angry Joe, aren't we?
Well, I give it the Centrist Fruit seal of approval.
Hmm. Next on our agenda,
And that comes from the monarch of all centrist fruit.
next on our agenda, we reviewed the Obi-Wan video game.
Kill me. But all things aside, we'll have definitely a lot more games to talk about and some of the books. Like I am looking forward to, so for anyone wanting to stay tuned as far as podcast though, we still got some versus videos in the work. We still got some analysis stuff going, psychological profiles, all the fun stuff that Deadponic and I. One thing that we are really looking forward to making, which stay tuned for, is around April to May, we are going to be releasing one extremely long miniseries covering Revenge of the Sith. And
Ooh.
it's going to cover every single form of it. So we'll be covering the movie, we'll be covering the novelization, we'll be covering the video game, and we'll throw in the comic as well.
Well, we'll
Just
pay
for fun.
reference to it. But believe it or not, Revenge of the Sith is coming out back to theaters on April 25th in time for May the 4th. So make sure you go see it. Make sure you go see it in theaters because I know I
That's an order, trooper.
am.
Yeah, but I'll definitely be looking forward to it. It'll be fun. Yeah, and if anyone wants to see like any kind of live reaction of us in regards to that, feel free. I mean, we've already seen the movie, but hey, there's no way to see it like seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
I think I'm gonna quote the special edition commercial. If you haven't seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
hmm. And okay, funny story. Believe it or not, I have the original DVD from when the movie first came out, and now I have most of the versions of the movie. I am going to be maybe releasing
That'd be another interesting podcast to do one day, like covering the different versions of each film,
yeah.
especially when you account for like the original trilogy, like the difference between the theatrical run versus all the special editions.
Mhm.
And I'd be interested in covering that, especially since tragically George and even now Disney is so freaking stubborn about releasing an HD version of the theatrical cut. But,
Yeah.
what are you gonna
I
do?
will be releasing my own video talking about like some of the deleted scenes related to Revenge of the Sith. I am okay. I will say, George, Disney, wherever you guys are, please release a 4-hour version of, or at least put the deleted scenes back in the movie. Take some that are not important, like Shakti and all that, but the Senate scenes, big. They're important.
Just finish their effects. Finish their effects and release them. Like, go for it. Like, it, yeah, like, honestly, I would almost say that would be a way to entice people. more, like if it had extended scenes, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our Battlefront 2 retrospective on the Rise of the Empire campaign. I hope you all enjoyed this very much. I hope this was enjoyable and insightful, even if there's things that we said that you don't quite agree with. But, with all that in mind, we really enjoyed coming together and just talking about it. But
Nostalgia. Nostalgia.
yeah, exactly. It's a very nostalgic and fun game and made up a lot of fans' childhood, including my own. So yeah, with that in mind, that's about it on as far as my end goes. So Deadponic, do you have anything left to say before we close out?
Actually, I did want to quickly talk about a clone apart before we, because that
Oh
actually,
yeah, sure, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, our honorable mention.
okay, so a clone apart is basically, it was created by a YouTuber. It basically uses the in-game engine and some of the models. It basically focuses around one particular clone named Damson and some of his clone buddies as they go through the Clone Wars, but there's a bit of a time travel mechanic where Damson is still in his clone trooper outfit and he's going through basically the whole thing about the Empire. And I am really sad that it never went on to become a season 2, likely because YouTube was cracking down on stuff, or he just lost interest, or something happened. But overall, the series is a comedy, and it's very funny, and I really enjoy it because they make fun of some of the funniest stuff, like as we mentioned with the Dark Trooper. This is the series that calls up the Dark Trooper. We're like, why do you have nipples on your armor? And also, they refer to the Scout Trooper as just Scout. And I really appreciate it. I like it because it really shows like what you can do with just like an old game like that, and you can make a funny series. And Damson himself is pretty unintentionally funny.
Back when Machinima was such a big thing,
Oh yeah,
but it's like for anyone who hasn't seen it, season 1 is still available on YouTube, at least as far as I know.
yes it is.
So honestly, even though sadly it ends on a cliffhanger and we'll never really get a resolution to the story, I'd still recommend watching it. It's hilarious to
It is
watch, and
very good.
it's just a fun ride all the way through. But
Although I will say the one thing I do know is that the clone commander, he's still in his clone commander attire, but he's in the Empire, and I thought he's a really fun character. All the
he's a very nostalgic clone commander.
yeah, he is.
Back in my day, we fought a bunch of battle droids and stuff. What the heck? What the heck's an aluminum falcon?
Yeah, and it's also they take some of the funniest, like some of the most smallest things, and they turn them into a running gag, like the interrogation droid. Please stand at attention, and then it starts shooting at Damson because he's like, it doesn't
Yes, yes.
recognize him.
It's great. It's
It's
great.
absolutely great. Anyway, so I'm signing off. But thank you guys so much for listening, and hopefully you guys have the same nostalgia that we do.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider giving this video a like, subscribing, and or leaving a comment and telling us what you guys think. Did you have exposure? Did you grow up with Battlefront 2 like we did? Is this like your first exposure to it? Which I pray to God it's not, because I swear if you haven't played the campaign yet, what the hell are you doing here? Go play it. But
Classic collection. Classic collection.
or if you're newer and this is more recent, tell us what you guys think. So with all that in mind, part 1 will be in the description below for anyone who needs to catch up. But otherwise, this concludes part 2. Thank you all for watching. This is King Orange, and we're signing out. Peace.